guys. I'm really sorry about this sudden decision to go live, but the reason was that earlier on, well, yesterday it was, day before, Ivana contacted me. I'll just give it a little bit of background information. Around about 8 years ago, I think,
Yeah.
I had a double book launch in Zagreb, in the wonderful country of Croatia. And Ivana and another lady, what was her name?
Lasta.
Right.
Lasta, yeah.
We're working for different publishers,
There
both
were
publishing
different publishers, yeah.
and different publishers who are publishing my work. And we decided we'd do this big double event, which we did. And I was there for about 3 or 4 days. And Ivana, you got me on everywhere. I was on the television, I was on radio, I was going from interview to interview. But one of the days, one of the most extraordinary experiences was when Ivana and I were wandering through the streets of Zagreb. The amount of people that just kept stopping, wanting to talk to her and wanted her autographs and everything. And I realized I was with quite a local celebrity. And then Ivana took me to one of the record shops, and I purchased a couple of her CDs as well. And it was like, it was like so cool. I felt like I was living the life of a rock star, which was really fascinating, really, really great. Now we've stayed vaguely in contact over the years, but nothing very definite. We've been friends on Facebook, and we've occasionally sent messages. But over the last few days, or the last few weeks, there's been extraordinary experiences taking place in Ivana's life. And she said, could she chat to me today? So we joined up on Facebook Messenger. And as soon as she started telling me about what was taking place in her life, I was thinking, my word, this is extraordinary. This is absolutely extraordinary. Now, just a little bit of background explanation. When we had a coffee while we were over there all those years ago, we had a long chat about my writings and my ideas, and particularly my interest in the aura states of migraine, particularly classic migraine, because I'm a classic migrainer myself, and I get aura states. And Ivana was explaining that she had similar experiences. But it seems that Ivana's experiences have become more and more powerful and more intense in recent months. And it seems that she's living through, the only thing I can explain is absolute evidence of my cheating the ferryman hypothesis, which is quite amazing. So Ivana, tell us very quickly a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get into what's been happening to you.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm from Croatia, and we really didn't meet 8 years ago while I was working with the publisher, and it just like it was the normal thing to like do the promotion for the books and everything we did at that time, and it just like struck me like, oh, you met some really interesting guy, like, okay. And we started chatting about our lives and migraines, for example. And at that time, I didn't really know everything about Anthony. I read the book, and it was the near-death experience. So it wasn't anything about like perception, or I didn't go into it like deep. I was just trying to, being PR manager, I was trying to figure out how to put it in the mainstream, how to like mellow it so people can hear what you're saying. And I was thinking more about people than about myself at that particular moment. But I was listening, and when we talked, I had a feeling like we had this conversation, like I know some things, but I just like decided to ignore it. Like, okay, sometimes I get the feeling that I know what somebody's gonna say, or that something is important, but I don't see the reason why it's important now, or maybe it'll be. I just like went on with my life, and had like billions of little experiences that was pointing me, but I still decided to ignore it. It was easier than to start to ask myself so many different questions, because it's not just my migraine. It's like, why I think that this is synchronicity, or I didn't even know the word for it. And just bit by bit, something just like started to come together. And I didn't even have anybody to talk to, because like, who to talk to? I can talk to my doctor about my migraine and my auras and how they are changing, and the sensations and visions and distortion I get and see in that particular state. But everybody was just like telling me, yeah, that's the way the aura feels, that's the way the aura works. Let's put you on some medication, maybe it will be better. um, they don't know why that's happening, and it's just something that I'm gonna live with. So, and I accepted that. And after my pregnancies, perhaps the things shifted a bit um with my auras, because before that my auras came, my vision distortion in my aura was always on my upper left side. And every time when it's on my upper left side, it goes like classic, like going numb, fingertips, like my face, and 2 minutes in, the headache kicks in, and everything that goes with just the classic experience of aura. But when it's on my right side, when the tingling starts on my right side, and my peripheral vision start to distort on the right side, it just opens something like in slow motion. Everything is slowed down, and even my body parts, when I look at my arms and my fingers, I feel like I'm going long and slow. And I felt like I'm watching myself behind myself, from the back of my head, like seeing the layers of me in front of me. After the seeing my like arms and legs and floor stretched, and everything was like in the, like looking through a telescope, but the different other side, like.
That, by the way, that is a brilliant example, because one of the things a few years ago I wrote a biography of Philip K. Dick, the American science fiction writer, and one of the things that Phil described when he was a child was he used exactly that analogy, the idea that he felt he was looking down a telescope. And it was something you said before to me, the idea of this kind of seeing yourself almost in slices, like you're extending in space and time. Now, again, I mentioned to you there's something called the specious present, which I think it was the American psychologist James first used. And it's the idea that ordinarily we all seem to exist, normally neurotypicals, people who don't have aura states and everything else, their moment, the specious present is just the moment. But it seems to me that's what's happening with you is your specious present is spreading out, as if you are aware of what's about to happen next, and also you're in part of your past. So when you use that analogy of feeling yourself in slices, I was reminded again, Herman Minkowski, who is was one of Einstein's teachers. He had something he called block time, and the idea that we are not just ourselves in this moment, but we are all ourselves throughout our lives, like this whole kind of long, thin creature that actually starts tiny at our birth, then gets bigger and bigger and bigger as we get bigger, and then gets smaller and smaller. And again, the British writer J.B. Priestley mentioned this in his play Time and the Conways, the idea of these slices of time. But it seems that when you get into aura states, you go into something completely different. It seems that your world, you're accessing a much broader reality than we ordinarily have. And I just wanted to get in there just to mention that, because there'll be people listening here who experience out of the body experiences. There will be people who experience sleep paralysis. There will be people who experience the idea of lucid dreaming. And they were all things that you mentioned when you were talking to me before. And they're all things I really want to focus in on now. So I just wanted to jump in to just put it into context. So please now continue.
Yeah, so it just started with the little things. And I just couldn't really ignore it anymore, because every time I had that kind of aura, something would happen after that. Like I would see something that it's in connection of something else in my life, and now I would be like, no, what? Like just puzzle myself all the time. So, and then I came to some kind of crossroad in my life where I needed to figure something that was really big, and it was decision, like really black and white decision, like to do this or not to do this, to take it or not take it, change it or not change it. And just like my intuition many times before, it was so loud to choose it differently. And I don't know why the word differently, because it's as I know, like what I chose so many previously time before.
What? So the idea that you've been to this point in your life
Yeah,
many times,
yeah.
and that you made different decisions last time, do you think?
I guess
Right.
that's just my like inner feeling, and like I'm on a verge of doing something completely different.
Hmm.
I don't. It's hard to describe,
Yeah.
because it's not. It's not the. It's not the voice. It's not the. Um, I can't even put a finger on it. It's just very loud sensation.
As if something's trying to scream at you but can't
Yeah,
communicate with you.
yeah.
Because this is one of the issues that there's a possibility that effectively, if it's coming from your non-dominant hemisphere, the non-dominant hemisphere is non-verbal. There isn't the verbal capacity in the non-dominant hemisphere sometimes. And if your daemon, your higher self, I'd argue that we're existing in a computer game of our lives, and we are in-game sprites. We are eidolons. We're in the game. We're living this life for the first time. We only live it for once, and then we die, and then we disappear. But there's another part of us that has played this game many, many times, which I call the daemon. And the daemon guides you through your life, but it tries to communicate with you in the only way it knows how. Now, sometimes this can be precognitive dreaming. It can be manipulating your environment in some way to create synchronicities, possibly. But I don't know how the mechanism would work there, because synchronicities are outside of yourself, but
Yeah.
making you see synchronicities there. But you were saying that, there's this powerful something. Now, again, there was the very famous Argentinian writer, Jorge Borges, who wrote this amazing book called The Garden of the Forking Paths. And in this, he describes this idea that there are a myriad of paths we can take. And any one life is just the series of those choices you take through the labyrinth. And we're
Mm.
all in these labyrinths. But your daemon knows which way to turn. And it's how your daemon is desperately trying to communicate with you at the moment. Is extraordinary, isn't it?
Yeah.
So what do you think has manifested the daemon in you? Do you feel that this is a new phenomenon in your life, or do you feel these inklings have been with you for most of your life and they've just got more intense recently?
I think it became more intense, because it's like I can remember a number of times where I like knew I need to do it differently or choose differently, and I didn't. And I would be so like sometimes after that would be like, why don't you listen to yourself? Like, because I probably believed in my mind that it was really my inner me or something that was like just trying to explain it to me. But it is a thing that I really did ignore it. And as I told you, like I was aware of my ignorance on that because I didn't know what to do with it. Because if you start digging, it's just like it goes on and on and on and on. And I wasn't ready for it.
Yeah, which you seem to be clearly now, and you know, there's all these kind of things that are spinning out in my mind now, and I'm thinking this because, of course, the thing we were discussing was the way you felt the need to contact me, which was extraordinary. Can
Yeah,
you tell
that
us a little
was,
about that? This is
yeah,
just weird, guys. This is extraordinary.
yeah. Um, I was really grasping my mind a lot about the things that are happening in the last few months, maybe, but intensively, like last 10 days. And I was like, okay, who do I talk to? Like, how do I even say this? What what is my question? Yeah, because I tried to talk to my friends to I tried, but none of them like doesn't have nothing to say. Just like, okay, it's a phase in life. It's a, you know, like the things that people say, like everyday stuff, like, oh, it's nothing. You're too tired. You're not sleeping enough with those two babies, and it's all true. They're not saying anything wrong, but it's just not it. And then, like in my mind, the alarm went off. But I did have this talk, and I had it with you, and I couldn't figure if it was just like my me remembering our talk that we really had in this reality like 8 years ago, and was trying to remember uh, in more details what we talk about, and it just trigged me, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna send you a message because I don't have anybody else to talk. So let's go to the expert. And isn't it like the weird coincidence that I met you at some point?
Yeah.
Because it's like, who do you call for that?
Ghostbusters.
Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
No, it's like, but I do have a person I can call, and he's the one, like he knows about it. So I did that, and while I was writing you a message, I was really um, trying to come up with any kind of question because my message was then plainly weird. It's like, what do you want? What do you expect to get from it? And I was just started to writing you, and English is not my first language. Croatian is my first language, so I like trying to figure the words I need to use just to point you where am I, what is on my mind. And while I was writing that um, and click send, I was like in peace with myself. Okay, okay. And then my phone glitched. Something happened to my uh, screen, and one word from my message to you just was stuck on my screen, and my screen wasn't frozen so that I couldn't do anything with it. I could do anything with the phone, but the word was in on my screen all the time. In every app I would open anything, and it could be any word, but it was guidance.
Because it's, I think
And
it was quite,
I know I was so like, okay, this blew my mind, and I made a screenshot, and I made a screenshot video of of my phone, and like recorded myself on the microphone. It was like, okay, Anthony, this really is happening. So it's just like little things, but they point you in some direction. And it's first time I really am listening.
because this is the issue, isn't it? That we get these messages all the time. I'm hoping that members of my group will be listening, or not my group, but the people I know. And we've all been drawn together as a little group. Well, it's getting a big group now. It's not a small group anymore. And we've all been drawn together by the most alarming series of synchronicities and coincidences that draw us all together. You know, and as I was saying to you before, we sit down sometimes over coffee and we'll just discuss the bizarre states of circumstances whereby things happen in such a pointed way that it's not coincidence, it's synchronicity. And of course, synchronicity, when they have significance in some way, or there's an inner joke going on there, and you sometimes see the joke. Like last week, something really peculiar happened to me that I posted on Facebook, whereby I was having problems with my vision. And I phoned up my opticians. My optician said, I just tried to get an appointment with my optician. And the optician said, well, what's the problem? And I said, well, I'm seeing floaters. I've got black floaters in my eyes, and I'm seeing flashing lights in the corner of my eyes. And funnily enough, I explained to her, and I said, and I get classic migraine, and it's a different kind of flashing. It's not migraine flashing. It's different kind of flashing. And she immediately, the receptionist immediately disappeared from the phone and called the optician in, the professional in there, and the professional turned around and said, you really need to get yourself quickly to casualty, because you might have a detached retina. We can't see you. We're fully booked, unfortunately. Otherwise, I'd get an emergency appointment for you. But I went down to the local hospital and I just took one look at the queues there and I said, I'm not going to do this. Unfortunately, I got back home and my phone rang, and it was the lady from Horsham, one of the local towns here, of the opticians. And she said, we've got a cancellation tomorrow. Would you like to come in? So here I am going in, and I had to get the train in to Horsham. It's about a 20-minute drive, train journey from here. And while I'm there, I start reading about, in a book about levitation and people levitating, quite by random in a book. And, it was just literally, I just grabbed a book because I need to be reading one. And then I looked up on my screen and I found, the screen just found a picture for me of a levitating priest. Okay. And I thought, that's weird. So St. John of Coppertono, I think it was. So I then get off the train, looking at my screen, going, why have I got this picture of a levitating priest? I then got off the station, and then the platform across from me had this huge advert. And on the advert was a levitating woman floating in the air. So I thought, this is really weird. What is this trying to tell me?
Yeah.
And then I get off the train, walk out of the train concourse to see a bus driving away. I've got photographs of all of these, by the way, on Facebook. And the bus is driving away. And on the back, there's two levitating women on the back of the bus. And when I go into the opticians, I mention this to the optician. And she, people, when you start talking to them, you think you're mad. And it was only then it hit me. It was a joke. Why was I going there to the opticians? I had floaters in my eyes. These people were floating. And I thought, my word, this is exactly how Carl Gustav Jung and Wolfgang Pauli talked about synchronicities and coincidences. They're in jokes. It's the way the universe jokes with you in some way. Now, it was something you said when you were saying that when you're in these states, you seem to know what's going to happen next. You seem to have precognitions taking place. Yeah. Can you explain a little bit about this?
It's mostly connected to my dreams when I go to sleep after that. Mostly I don't really remember the movie that went on in my dream. Like projection of it. But I wake up with the feeling of knowing something that I don't even know where it came from. And then, I don't know, a few days after that, a month, I find myself in like bizarre situation where somebody is telling me or doing the exact thing that was in my mind. And it's like I'm watching the thing that I saw. And I know what the person is gonna do or say. And I never say anything. I don't do anything. I'm just like the observer of the situation. And I don't know why I never prepare myself for that. Like, because I know when I wake up or whatever, I remember it stucks with me. But after sometimes it just like I go on with my life and I don't think about it anymore, or at least not so often, especially when it's something that it's not really important or big. But yeah,
This
so
is, sorry, go on.
no, so when the big stuff happens, like some information and some situation that like I know it's gonna hurt me or gonna like make me feel something intense, then I wake up with that same feeling, and I have that feeling after some time in that kind of situation. So it's not really just something that somebody's gonna do or somebody's gonna say. It's like somebody's gonna make me feel, but it has to be intense. Like, you know, the anxiety feeling. Yeah, that kind of intense. It's not really rational feeling like, okay, I'm happy now. No, it's like it grasps you like strongly.
Yeah, it's
So
that feeling, isn't it?
sometimes it's the feeling, sometimes it's the situation and the word, but it's always the information that I already have.
The feeling somehow, you know, the feeling of anguish is not the wrong term. It's the feeling of the uncanny. One of the things, one of the elements of deja vu, which is
Yeah,
effectively what you're describing here, is that kind of an ineffable sensation that this is significant and it's strange, and it almost hits you in your stomach or in your heart or
yeah,
somewhere. It's kind of
yeah,
visceral. It's
yeah,
visceral. It's if your soul is feeling it. Now, what you're saying here is very important, because an associate of mine by the name of Dr. Arthur Funkhauser is a Jungian psychotherapist based in Bern in Switzerland. Art is also a quantum physicist. So by background, he's an expert in holograms and holography, but he's also a very interesting guy spiritually. And Art wrote a paper around about 25 years ago now called The Dream Theory of Deja Vu. Now, I read this and then subsequently contacted Art about it. And what his theory is exactly what you're describing there. And Art will be delighted to hear this, and I will contact him afterwards. Because what Art argues is that when you have a deja vu sensation or a deja vécu, already lived sensation, what you're doing is you're recognizing a circumstance that you've lived some time before. Now, Professor Vernon Knepp, who's based in Seattle, he was the guy that came out with the very first book, major book on deja vu, and he did the definition. And the definition of deja vu is an interesting one. It's the recognition of something that you have experienced in your indefined past. And it's very important that it's indefined. It's not recognition of something that you're seeing, it's a recognition of something that you have forgotten in some way, and that memory is brought up again from your subconscious into your mind because you recognize it. Now, Art's argument is that you've had a dream recently, you've had a precognitive dream, and you have forgotten it, has become sublimated. You remember it when you wake up, but it's always in your memory, but it needs to be stimulated.
Yeah.
Then you start to live the circumstances, and suddenly there's this dawning recognition that I have done this before. Now, this is very powerful, and I'm absolutely fascinated that you have described exactly that feeling and sensation. Now, the second point is also an important one. The one you said that you feel you know what's going to happen next, but you can't do anything about it. Now, there's another friend of mine on Facebook that contacted me many years. No, he came to one of my talks. He read one of my books, and he came to one of my talks. He's a guy called Chris McPeake. So he has the same surname as mine, only he's got the MC in front of it. And Chris is literally a rocket scientist. He was, I think at that time, he was doing his PhD when I met him at Manchester in rocket science. And Chris is a very interesting guy. He has a tumor on his pineal gland, which affects him. And he explained to me that he lives most of his life out of time. He always knows what's going to be happening next, and he will suddenly recognize what's going to happen next, and he knows the words that people are going to say to him. And I said to him, well, why don't you then say what they're going to say? And he said something of profound significance, and it's something you intimated as well. He said, if I say what the person is going to say, they won't say it, because I've already said it to them, and therefore they'll say something completely different. And he said, in which case, I will have changed the universe. I will have changed the path of time to go onto a completely different route than was going before. Now, only in recent years there was a paper written by Stephen Hawking and Frank Hartle of CERN, and it's called the top-down hypothesis of quantum physics. And get this argues that because of quantum physics, there are myriads of what's called wave functions. And each wave function contains a future that can come to pass as long as we make it happen. But all the other futures that we don't make happen still exist in potentiality. They're still already there. So every decision we make, it's like Everett's many worlds interpretation, every decision we make collapses a universe and a wave function to accommodate the decision we've made. So your comment there is exactly the same as Chris's, the idea that I can't say it. But there's one example which I'll be posting on Facebook in the next few weeks, when I did an interview on BBC Radio Merseyside. And I used to do these regular shows, and one of the shows was on Deja Vu. And we had people phone in about their Deja Vu experiences. And it was uncanny. One guy phoned in, and he said he was sitting watching television with his wife, and suddenly he felt a snap, almost like he'd gone into an aura state, as we would describe it. And he said, I was listening to the television, and the television, I was ahead of time. I was hearing what the guy was going to say on the television in 10 seconds time. And he said it disturbed him so much, he had to get up. He was feeling sick. You know, we were talking about this feeling of sickness you get. And he got up and he walked out of the living room. And he described how, as he walked out of the living room of his house, he walked past his front door. And it was a glass front door. And he watched somebody walk past, and they walked past again. Now, again, remember there was a sequence in the movie Vanilla Sky called the Deja Vu cat sequence, where the Tom Cruise character sees a cat and sees it again. Or wasn't it? No, it wasn't. It was The Matrix, wasn't it? It was The Matrix.
Matrix.
It's in The Matrix. Of course, it's the cat sequence in The Matrix. He then sees that happen. He goes upstairs, and then he thinks, do you know, I can prove I'm being precognitive here, and you should try this. Because what he did was, he went back downstairs with a pen and a piece of paper in his hand, and he waited until he knew what his wife was going to say to him when he walked back in the room. He wrote it down on the piece of paper, folded it, and as she said it to him, he handed her the piece of paper. She opened the piece of paper, and written on the piece of paper was what the sentence she'd just said to him. That, to me, was absolute proof that precognition is real. And if precognition is real, it means that the future is already out there. And modern science cannot explain this. Now, your feelings. Now, you've said
You
that.
know, when we talked before, like
Go on.
before we went live, and I told you, you know what? I don't know my question to you, but I feel I know the answer, like, but I just feel him. And if I would like just sit down before and type the email to myself with the time, yeah, I was thinking about it. I was really, really thinking about it.
Now, isn't that again evidence that I was going to tell you that, and your daemon knew that I was going to tell you that,
Yeah,
and it was in your
it's
subconscious
like that. I feel it's like that. And
because
I'm sorry I didn't do it.
you should have done. And this
Yeah,
is what you
I know
need.
I should have. Yeah, I should
And
have.
one
And
of
I
the
was
things that I was
thinking
advising
about it
you,
too.
that what you must do is you must now start writing down your dreams. You need. J.W. Dunn was an Irish aeronautical engineer at the turn of the 20th to the 21st century. And he wrote a book in 1927 or 29 called An Experiment with Time. And in that book, he had a series of extraordinary dream precognitions that came to pass. And he advised people what you need to do is always have a dream diary, always have a notepad right next to your bed. Because as you said earlier on, what happens is you wake up and the dream is vivid. And you think, there's no way I'm going to forget this dream. It's a really curious feeling, isn't it? There's no way I'm going to forget this dream. And then within seconds, like a snowball in the sun, it just melts away. And you can't even remember what it was. But if you
Mm-hmm.
write it down, you then keep a record. And when it then comes true, you can then go back to it. Now, there was a guy there was an artist in I think it was 1989, September 1989. And he had a series of dreams of planes crashing into buildings. Okay? These were so vivid, and he knew it was going to be in New York. So what he did was he did a painting. And he did a painting of the Twin Towers. And in the corner of the painting, he did a painting of an aircraft. And he wrote underneath, plane flies into building. He knew that there would be an issue with this. So what he did was he took himself down to the local bank in Sudbury in North London. And he went into the bank. And in those days, and probably banks still do it, they will have a clock and they'll have the date and the time behind the counters, so you know what date it is. He then had somebody take a photograph of him with the painting standing in front of it, okay? And the painting shows 9/11, but the date in the bank, the NatWest Bank, was September the 11th, 1989. September the 11th, 1991. September the 11th, exactly 10 years later to the day, the planes fly into the Twin Towers, proving his painting. To me, that was proof. But then he did it again. He then had a series of dreams of Concorde crashing. And he again did a painting of Concorde with somebody sitting on the wing with a French flag. And the back of the plane is on fire. And we know that Concorde crashed at Paris, Orly Airport. I think it was Orly, and it crashed in Paris. Now, that plane had never, ever had crashes before. It was the safest plane ever. Nobody would ever believe that the Concorde would have crashed. He could have picked any aircraft. He didn't. He picked that one. And then finally, there is a friend of mine who had a vivid dream where he was in a hotel room. And he was in the hotel room, and he suddenly gets up and walks to the hotel window. And as he looks out the window, he sees Concorde go flying past with its back on fire. He watches it crash. And what gets creepier, he then feels people's bodies going through him. And he's hearing people's voices talking to each other in German, saying, what has happened to us? What's happened to us? He was so disturbed by this, he sent a fax to British Airways, date stamped, to say a Concorde is going to clash, I think in France. You need to do something about it. He sent that to British Airways, but of course they did nothing because they get these crank things all the time. Yeah. The really interesting caveat on this story is that the people on the plane that died in the Concorde crash Most of them were German because they'd actually hired Concorde for the flight. And he picked up even the German accents. Now, these things people can say are just coincidences. How many things, how precise has
Yeah.
somebody got to be to get over this idea that there's coincidences? Now, your experiences, I've rambled on a little bit, but I really, because we really wanted to talk and we're really having just a chat now, and I'm giving you evidence of what you're experiencing is extraordinary. Now, I think it's directly related to your migraine, and I think there's something changing with your migraine. What are your specialists saying about it? What are their comments about it?
Nothing really, except okay, we should like take a new um, um, MR uh, just to check it out if there's a change with my lesions.
Yes. Now explain about the lesions. This is interesting, guys. Listen to this.
That's the first time when I started to have migraines around I was 17, and all kind of neurologists were trying to figure out like what's the cause, is it hormonal, is it, like, and oh, it's my dog. And one thing led to another. They did like the whole scan on me with um, uh, EEG,
Yeah.
like then when they're flashing the lights, I don't know how the in English how the
Stroboscopic light.
yeah. And just like I went through the whole list of the things I need to check before I get the concrete like thing. And they told me it's a migraine with aura, and they also try to figure if it's maybe an MS, multiple sclerosis, but it's not connected to that. So, and the last thing was MR. They scanned my brain and like wrote down it's here and here, 2 lesions. Let's put you on this new therapy. It's anti-epileptic drug. The smallest dosage, I take it every night before I go to sleep for last 10 years now. I didn't take it while I was pregnant, but this is my like therapy, and I do have less migraines while I'm on the drug. When I'm not, then they are really often. Like at one time I had 3 days in a row, and I ended up in hospitals, in hospital, like on ER, because the headache was just too much. So the thing is, they say, okay, we're gonna just keep an eye on it, and that's it.
This is interesting, isn't it? The first one that I find fascinating is that they chose to actually give you epileptic drugs to deal with it, because people have argued many times with my hypothesis, which I call the Huxleyan spectrum. I argue that there's a spectrum from neurotypical to migraine to temporal lobe epilepsy, possibly even then to schizophrenia and various other things, and it's a continuum. And I do know from my own research that there are areas that overlap between the different types. Now, for you, I think this is fascinating because it can be linked in many ways. That the lesions you had, I would suspect, could have possibly been caused by things called transitory ischemic attacks. And what these are, they're kind of little micro strokes that take place in the brain. Now, why I'm intrigued by this is that people out there will know I wrote a book on the American science fiction writer Philip K. Dick. And in the book, I discuss in great detail his precognitive abilities. In fact, the subtitle of the book is "The Man Who Remembered the Future." So rather similar to what you're saying. You know, you've lived it before and you're remembering it.
I haven't read it, so
Okay.
I will.
Okay. Now, what is interesting here is that when Phil died, he died of a massive stroke. But when they did, I think I'm right, that when they did the autopsy and some of the work, they came to the conclusion that he'd been having these mini strokes for many, many years, these transitory ischemic attacks, which caused lesions on his brain. Now, could this be what explained his precognitive abilities? Is this what explained what was called his 2374 experiences, where suddenly he started experiencing a whole different world? He started to believe that he was existing, that we were actually existing in 73 AD, and that time had stopped at 73 AD with the fall of the temple and the Roman siege of the temple, and that time had stopped, and he was living in this dual time. And he started to manifest something he called Valis, this vast acting life form that became manifest in its life. Now, I'd argue Valis was his daemon. And he wrote novels. He wrote a novel called Valis about this experience. Now, I'd argue that this is what you're experiencing here, in that your doors of perception are starting to open, and the brain's ability to attenuate, the brain's ability to break out, to stop you perceiving the wider reality, is being eroded. And what's happening is you're starting to break through the matrix, almost the reality we live within, the brain created illusion of reality that we think is external reality is holographic in nature. There's more and more research suggesting this. And when you start to break out, you start to see the pixelation, almost the breakdown of it, the way it shimmers in certain ways, the way it seems to
the aura
break down.
shimmers like a pixelization.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just explain what I mean. I get aura, so I know what it's like. But could you explain to the audience, for the people who don't get aura, what it's like? Because I love it. I find it a fascinating.
Yeah. It's like you can. You start like losing a piece of this the picture you see, and you can't point your eyes on it because it always runs away from you, because it's always in the corner of your vision, and it starts like a little dot in the picture, or like video if you are like watching, and just started to like shimmer, and it goes bigger and bigger, and for me it goes in like a thunder, like the crack in my vision field, and it goes so quickly, like shimmering so quickly. It looks like when you break the screen of your phone and you see the pixels like breaking down, like, and it's like you're watching through the diamond shape, as the lights when you're looking at diamond, and when the lights goes through the diamond,
like a prism.
Yeah. And that kind of shimmering and distorting is in my aura sensation. And my parents always joked like, okay, Ivana, if you see the diamonds, come on, get one. We need one diamond. So that's the first thing I described when I even first time I had the aura, and I was trying to paint it. Yeah, because it was hard to explain.
Lots of people do. I mean, this is one of the fascinating things about aura states, because for me, I enjoy it so much. I'm just going, what's going to happen next? And the scotoma, the breakdown of the vision, and the shimmering, and the half moon shape, and the light. and that kind of curious otherworldly sensation you have, you know, where you know that you're experiencing something very, very peculiar and special. Now, again, if anybody is interested in researching this in greater detail, an associate of mine, Richard Grossinger, has written a book on migraine aura. There's somebody called Poden, I think, or Polden in Germany. There's the Migraine Aura Institute in Germany, where they actually collect people's aura details. But the definitive book to read on this is Oliver Sacks's book called Migraine. And in this, he discusses lots of things that we've been discussing here and the peculiarities of deja vu sensations, because deja vu, my aura state involves deja vu sensations, which is linked. Also artists. I mean, Giorgio di Chirico, the Italian artist, it's been argued that he was painting very much his aura states. And specifically Hildegard of Bingen, who was a German mystic, I think in the 14th or 15th century. If you look at her paintings, she was painting migraine auras. And she said that she was seeing God. She felt that she was coming out of herself into another world of mysticism. Now, again, there is something called Waxman-Gershwin syndrome, which is something that people who experience temporal lobe epilepsy have. And it's hyper-religiosity. They suddenly see connections where other people don't see them. And they think that this is something aberrant and something wrong, whereas I'd argue it's the opposite. They're starting to see relationships that neurotypical people don't see. And the classic example of this is the writings of Dostoevsky, the Russian writer, where Dostoevsky used to write about his characters and where his characters would, one of the characters, Prince Myshkin in The Idiot, turns around and he describes in detail, and he says, I would give up the whole of my life again and again for that sensation I have before I have a seizure, the aura state. Because he said, in that moment, I sense God, I sense everything. I know everything and I feel everything. Now, this is so powerful because it means to me that what is happening here, and in my book, The Daemon, A Guide to Your Extraordinary Secret Self, and my book, Opening the Doors of Perception, I argue that this is what's happening. The doors of perception, Blake's doors of perception being blasted open for people. Now, you and I get a glimpse of it, and we get just this tiny glimpse through the doorway, isn't it? Of something magical.
What do I do with it? Like, I'm thinking about, okay, do I need to start like making music more?
This was going to be my point. This was because you're intensely creative. You're a writer. You're a musician. You write your own music. Your music, you said something on your website. No, it was on the newspaper report about Bye Bye, your single. Okay. And in the newspaper report about Bye Bye, you said that you were writing it for your children and the lyrics just came to you.
Yeah.
Now, tell us more about where do your lyrics come from? Do you plan them? Where does the music come from? Where does your wonderful tunes come from?
I don't know. It just starts at the sensation I want to express something that I'm connected to, and then I start to find the notes and the words that are describing and sending the message. I always really want to send a message. That's like, I'm obsessed with that. Yeah, I just want to, you just have to have a sense to me. Maybe that's why I'm like so puzzled with this, because I ignored it so long. And now I know I just need some answers. I know I can't get them all, but I just need to know what to do with it. Well, because I have the urge to do something.
That's the problem, isn't it? When I first started writing my very first book, when I first started, I didn't know what I was going to be writing about. And literally, I was sitting in my study, in front of a computer, in a word processor, and I suddenly started having a migraine.
Yeah, I remember that story. That's
And the
so
deja vu sensation. And then I realized I needed to write about deja vu. And I was guided so often, because what I think is happening is your daemon is coming through to you. You have, and he or she, and we always argue, and we've discussed this with my group, and I'm coming to the conclusion that ordinarily your daemon will be the opposite sex to you, like it is in the movie, His Dark Materials. You know, the idea is that your daemon will be, yours will be male, mine will be female. And I tend to call her because she comes to me sometimes and she speaks. And it was Myron Dial, the American artist who has been on my show a few times. I've linked him onto this. I'm hoping he might be able to listen in on this. Myron's life is extraordinary. Myron experiences temporal lobe epilepsy, has done since he was 3 years of age. He breaks through. You know, you said about the world behind the world that you sense is there. Myron has broken through into that world. He even knows its name. It's called Zelkon. And in Zelkon, he lives a whole different life. And in Zelkon, he meets his daemon. His daemon comes through from Zelkon into this world, and his daemon is called Charon. And when he first contacted me, I received an email out of the blue from Charon. So I received his first communication with Myron was his daemon communicating with me, saying, you are right about this because I am a daemon. And it was only subsequently that I got to know Myron as well. So daemons are there. Daemons can talk to us. Daemons can talk through us. And they know so much more than us. But the interesting thing is they only know as much as they will know in multiple times of living your life. So there will be a point in your life where you've died every time, or this time you survive, and the daemon saves you because it does something to save you. And I've got so many cases of people's lives being saved by the daemon. But then the problem is, right, watching a movie or a computer game. Suddenly the daemon's just like you. The daemon is in a part of the movie it's never experienced before. So it can't help you anymore. And I'd argue this is why deja vus drop off markedly when you get older. It's because as you go through your life, there's more and more chance that you're going to get to a point that you've never experienced before, so you're not going to recognize it. Now, this is exactly, and my hypothesis explains that, and nobody else I know has explained it in that way in terms of this mystery of deja vu. But then, intriguingly, it starts again right at the end of your life. There's something called late onset chronic deja vu. A guy called Chris Moulon at the University of Leeds is researching this at the moment with elderly people who get it, and also people who have Alzheimer's. It seems that, again, what in Alzheimer's takes place is the amyloid plaques in the brain are destroying the microtubules and the intrabrachial lattice work in the brain, which then opens up the brain to it stops the brain's ability to act as an attenuator. So elderly people start seeing people, they start experiencing Charles Bonnet syndrome where they see people everywhere. This is directly related to this whole phenomenon. And again, there is an associate of mine, Maggie Latourelle, who's written a book called The Gift of Alzheimer's. And in that she chronicles the decline of her mother into Alzheimer's. And her mother became precognitive. Her mother was seeing people. She was seeing dead people. She was doing everything. The book, well worth reading. Again, Maggie, I've interviewed on Consciousness Hour. So check back the old Consciousness Hours because you'll find a lot of this material. And Myron, I've interviewed him twice on there. So it seems that as we get towards the end of our life, it starts to kick off again. But then again, it should, because as we're getting older, we're ready to go back again, aren't we? We're ready to go back and live our lives again. So in which case those memories will start. And again, Peter Ouspensky, the Russian philosopher, Gary Lachman wrote a biography of him. And in that, he talks about the last months of Ouspensky's life, because he believed in the eternal return. He was saying that he needed to go back to relive his life, to get the memories back. I'm aware of time, and I don't want to take up any more of your time. But for a final bit, can you tell little people about your music and where they can find your music? Because I love your music. I adore it. I mean, that single you've got, You know, I've been playing it almost continually. I just love it. Bye Bye is just so great. And it's so much fun.
Yeah, it's fun. It's meant to be fun. It has a message. You don't speak or understand Croatian, but it the bye bye bye. I know you understand the bye bye bye, but it's about how we need to live our fullest life and justice. Yeah, and not to be pinned down with the things that we think that we need to do. We should live as we to experience, to learn, to grow, to go beyond and like talk to people. So that was my wish for my kids, and wish for me also, like have a great life, do something with it.
Maybe this is what you need to do. Maybe this is what your daemon is guiding you to do, to actually write songs about this. Write songs about this sensation. What is needed is somebody to write a classical song about migraine aura or the sensations you're having. Now, I know that, for instance, various people have written songs on Deja Vu as a phenomenon,
Yeah.
but nobody's really written it from the point of view of a classic migrainer.
Yeah, because nobody, how many people, what's the percentage of people with migraine
I
aura?
think I think it's about 7% of the, I don't know. I think, as I recall,
Oh,
it's
that's the
very
best
small, but
market.
it's small. It's small.
Anthony, that's not a good market.
But everybody else will then realize, won't they? And they'll say, wow, this is really good. I want a bit of this as well.
Yeah, but I do believe that people really that are not neurotypicals, uh, they do have ability to like see from the different point of view. So that is a gift. So
And you have a gift, and you not only can write the songs, you can write the music, you can perform them, you can sing them. And I was reading that you have extraordinary range as well. So you have an extraordinary voice. It's not just that you can sing, but your range apparently is quite extraordinary. But you never do it. Maybe this is the song you need to do. You need to actually really take the range up, you know. But everybody,
so much the things to discover about myself. I think I'm on some kind of path because it just cleared a bit to me.
welcome to the
I don't know
magic.
where it's gonna take me. I don't have that answer. I know you don't have it too,
No.
but I just like felt I need to talk to you.
And I hope that this discussion has helped, and I hope for people listening out there it's helped. We need to continue the discussion probably in private at some stage as well, because there's other things I want to chat with you about. But thank you so much for investing your time.
No,
And,
thank you.
you know, I will be putting this up on Facebook, on YouTube in the next day. So it'll be up on Facebook and it will stay there, and I'll put it up on YouTube as well, because I think this is a profoundly important watershed interview. And I think there'll be people out there who will be going, wow, this really is quite interesting stuff. The way my hand keeps disappearing, that's really quite weird as well, isn't it? The way the background, because in many ways, I always feel that these kind of background things we've got can actually trigger migraines as well, possibly. We shall see. But
Yeah, I'll
anyway,
tell you about it.
anyway, thank you so much.
Thank you, thank you.
It's been wonderful talking to you. Please stay in touch, and everybody out there, check out her music. It's fantastic. It's well worth listening to. Okay, thanks again. Bye
Thanks,
bye.
and bye.